Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another YouTube Live. I have decided to jump on just a little bit early. It works out better with my schedule, and those of you who reserved the time for this live are still going to be able to watch the replay, but welcome. I hope your week is going well so far and all your preparations for Thanksgiving, etc., are in full swing. But we're not going to talk about holidays anymore. We have already done some lives on that or some strategies on that. However, if you still want to grab our Happy Healthy Holiday freebie, I will put the link into the description. So some very detailed strategies for how to best navigate the holidays without any additional weight gain, and so that you finish off the year still feeling great about yourself, about your efforts, and you don't have to work it all back or work it all off or anything like that. Today, we're going to talk about something different, and that is actually two of the problems that we mostly address with our clients. And the first one being how to have more energy throughout the day, or just perceived energy, how to have steadier energy. And the second one being how to feel less anxious. And both of those we're going to look at through food, through lifestyle practices, and through training as well. I don't know if you have ever felt like, oh, where's my energy gone, or why am I feeling like this? There is no logical explanation in my mind, or if you ever feel anxious for quote unquote no particular reason. I certainly have been in both of those spots before, and it can be super frustrating, but even nicer when you do figure out some strategies for how to navigate your food better, to not just not have any crashes, but to actually feel and perform at your very, very best. So let's talk about the first one. Why do we often feel anxious for not necessarily a particular reason, or how can we tame that anxiousness rather? And quite often it comes down to actually like some basic things that many of us know about, but we might not implement them correctly, or we might not implement them consistently. So even if I'm saying a few things where you're like, duh, think about if you're actually still doing them or following them, because sometimes the answer might be no. So for example, caffeine. Caffeine is not only going to contribute to a poorer quality of sleep, especially if later on in the day, but it also might make you feel anxious right then and there, or like an hour later or 2 hours later. Like, I'm not even joking. For me, caffeine has that kind of effect where I am loving the experience. Like, I love coffee. Those of you who have been following me for any period of time are going to know that I love coffee. I love caffeine. Like, not caffeine. I love the coffee taste. But unfortunately, I have also figured out that it does contribute to a higher anxiety level later on, not necessarily immediately. It sometimes takes a while. Like, at first, I just get warm. I can feel my heart rate speed up. But then like 2-3 hours later, I feel more anxious. And at first I couldn't make that connection. In fact, as a police officer, I would often say like, oh, I can drink coffee before going to sleep, no problem at all. And I didn't realize how much it would actually like affect my overall energy levels throughout the day, because you have a ton of energy and then you have a crash again. You have a ton of energy and then you have a crash again. So by either timing our caffeine better or just tapering it off completely, we can actually do our body a lot of good. At least that is what I have found and what I have seen in many of my clients. Just the other week, I said to someone at the gym that I only drink decaf coffee, and he was like, oh, I could never do that. I love the coffee flavor. And I was like, well, I love coffee also, but clearly the caffeine is different. Like, you can have decaf coffee, no problem. And he gave it a try. A few days later, he came to me and he was like, whoa, I can't even tell you how much of a difference that has made to my anxiety levels, because he's also someone suffering from, not necessarily always the best mental health all the time. So I really, really, really want to encourage you, even if you think, oh, caffeine doesn't have any effect on me, but you're struggling with anxiety other times of the day, to at least taper it off. Also, another source of anxiety throughout the day can be related to not having regular eating patterns. So, for example, going without food for too long, or having portions too large or too small. And so figuring out the correct meal frequency and timing can be really, really helpful for just keeping that blood sugar steadier, which then will also send sort of like a safety signal to our body in the sense of, hey, you're all good. You don't need to panic about anything here. We're anticipating that there's going to be some food soon. We know that the next meal is coming, and you're also not feeling so overwhelmed from like digesting a ton of food at once. And the truth is also, if we don't have a strategic eating pattern, we are at times going to result more to poor choices. So like you haven't had anything to eat all day long, you didn't prepare for anything, and then you're grabbing the muffin in the afternoon, or you haven't had anything to eat all day long, and then you come home and you just eat anything that's inside because finally you want to relax and you want to give your body what it needs. So I highly encourage you to start planning ahead more, thinking ahead more, in the sense of, oh, it's been 3-4 hours, I should or could probably eat something. Listening to our hunger signals is not always conducive in those moments, because when we're in such a busy rush and we're so used to just being on the go, we often are not very in tune with our body, what our body really needs. Our body is by definition in a stressed state or not in a rest and digest state. So often that connection between the stomach, hey, I'm hungry, and the mind is not there. So I would just say, by establishing like a regular pattern and actually taking the time during your lunch to step away from the desk, even if it's just 5 minutes to drink a smoothie or a protein shake and some fruit or whatever, it's going to be better than if you just skip it completely. And that will also prevent you from making poor decisions and gravitating more towards the sugary things, or just in general, those kind of things. Another way how we can tame our anxiety is definitely through some breath work. So I know that I said lifestyle and food and training related, but still it is kind of included in the lifestyle work or lifestyle aspect. So whenever we are in a high state stress, often it is just how we're perceiving the situation. And our body doesn't differentiate between this is reality, this is a true threat, or this is a possibility. I'm thinking about something that could happen in 10 weeks' time, but I have actually no evidence that that is going to occur. So in those instances where you can realize like, hey, my mind is not playing tricks on me, but my mind is kind of going ahead into a place where it doesn't need to be going right now. Simply taking in deep breaths. So for example, something like box breathing, that means 4 seconds in, holding 4 seconds at the top, 4 seconds out, holding 4 seconds at the bottom, and doing that 5, 6, 7 times. That in and of itself is going to slow down your heart rate and therefore activate your parasympathetic nervous system more. Another method, which Huberman from the Huberman lab talks about quite a bit, is the psychological or physiological sigh, rather. So the physiological sigh means that you're going to take a very deep breath in, another quick breath in, and then a long and deep exhale. This, scientifically proven, is one of the fastest ways to activate the vagus nerve and therefore the parasympathetic nervous system, meaning you're going to just calm yourself down right away. Of course, not after one breath, but maybe take 3, 5, 10, however many, until you notice, okay, my body is calmer. Now I can have a calmer conversation with my mind also about what's actually going on, or what's an actual possibility that might happen. And if so, what is a possible action plan, so that I don't have anxiety for absolutely no reason. So now next, let's talk about training as well. So often anxiety also stems from just having an overall too high stress load, meaning you're constantly in the fight or flight sort of nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system, or you're consistently in a high cortisol state. And that often means that we're waking up feeling like, oh, okay, what do I need to do? It's like 3 o'clock in the morning, but I'm ready to go. Let's go. Or throughout the day, you just never have, like, either you might wake up a little bit later than, or feel a crash a little bit later, and then feeling anxious again in the afternoon. So it's just overall your energy levels and your anxiety levels or stress levels are just in not in a good pattern. And one contributing factor can sometimes be if we are doing too much high intensity training or too much stressful things all around. And that could be physical training, that can be emotional stress, that can be mental stress, that can be not enough food, that can be too much toxic food, that can be like literally anything that is stressful for the body is going to contribute to that. And therefore, if we moderate the training stress in a yes, in an efficient way, you should be moving regularly. I'm big on walks, on especially if it comes to utilizing them for kind of like a meditation almost, and just disconnecting from things. But apart from that, I still want you to do your strength training. However, many people come from a high intensity background, like myself as well. I have done or was doing CrossFit for many years, and then realized, okay, number one, it's not the most conducive way to getting my body to look the way that I want it to look. And number two, it's actually not good for my health at that time because I was not sleeping enough. I was just constantly stressed with the police work and so on. So like always kind of being switched on, and that just exacerbated it further. So then switching into more of a lower intensity training style. It's still high volume in terms of like more kind of bodybuilding style training, but not having that high shock for the nervous system on a regular basis was really helpful. And again, like I see that with clients, and science backs that up, that if we just take down the cortisol levels, or like the stress levels all in all, eventually it's going to register within your body, within your HPA axis. So like your hypothalamus, and therefore your body's registering, okay, we're not in constant danger. We don't constantly need to be switched on. We don't constantly need to feel anxious that something might happen. Someone's jumping out from somewhere. So I guess to sum up this first category of like how we can help someone feel less anxious through food, lifestyle, and fitness, would be number one, to develop a more regular eating pattern. And with that as well, minimizing caffeine. One thing I forgot to mention, really important actually, is to not have empty carbs or naked carbs on an empty stomach. So meaning including more protein, healthy fats, and fiber in your meals is going to slow down the digestion. And going back to the point of keeping the blood sugar more regulated is also going to help with the anxiety. So if you have ever used a continuous blood glucose monitor, you would see that very nicely, that the spikes in blood glucose, they're often also correlated with how you're feeling, like how anxious or how energized you're feeling at the time. And if you just have white rice with nothing else, or a piece of bread or a muffin, nothing else, you're going to get a very steep blood sugar release, as opposed to if you had even just a protein shake beforehand, or some vegetables and chicken or whatever, as kind of like with the meal, or even better, so like the first thing that you eat out of that meal, then you would get a very different response, and your anxiety levels would probably also, or you wouldn't feel like you're going through such an emotional roller coaster. So yes, that was, sorry, I forgot to mention that earlier, but on the point of food, regular eating patterns, including more protein, fiber, and healthy fats, and staying away from more of those processed things, the sugary things, and also alcohol. It's just really not going to help, even though it might feel like a tranquilizer at first. When you come off of it, the rebound, and then you might need more caffeine to balance that out. So I would just say minimizing alcohol to like 1 or 2 drinks once or twice a week is still going to be a helpful strategy. And then on top of that, working with things like your breath, going for walks, down regulating more often, and to also send yourself that reassurance, or reading more positive things. Sometimes we're even like hijacking our anxiety, our nervous system, by watching even more activating things on TV, or following people that are like always, oh, you need to be high intensity all the time. You can never just go to a yoga class and enjoy it. No, we want to kind of make sure that we have some down-regulatory practices in there as well, and adapting our training stress to what our body and our mind can actually handle. And many of these things that I'm talking about here are also going to help with the second type of struggle many of our clients face, and that is, or many of the people that come to us rather face, and that is just having suboptimal energy levels throughout the day. So clearly having a regular eating pattern and not eating too much in one sitting or too little in one sitting is going to be helpful. And one thing that I see quite often, or sometimes, there is people that are like used to grazing. So they snack a lot, which it doesn't feel like it's a lot, but they snack frequently throughout the day. And so they don't really ever feel like they're having proper food or like they're actually getting full. And that might keep you like a little bit alert for a little bit longer, because of course you get some sugar, so that goes to your brain and you function better, but it's not going to provide you with some optimal energy levels, and especially not for the duration of time that we want. Like, I don't want you to think about food every single hour or all the time. I want you to have a meal, enjoy that, feel satiated, not full afterwards, but satiated, and then going maybe like 3 hours before you have your next meal or snack in that case. So that would be ideal, because in those 3 hours you can get a bunch of stuff done, as opposed to trying to work, and while you're working you're already like thinking about what you're going to have for a snack, and then you kind of venturing into the kitchen and you're grabbing something and you're coming back and then you're still thinking about food. So let's eliminate that food noise and make sure that you're actually able to focus on what you're supposed to focus on, your work, your kids, whatever is important to you. So to that point, like figuring out meal frequency, and we have some live chats on meal frequency and meal timing. Overall, it's going to come down to individuality and what works best for you. There's not going to be a formula of like, hey, everybody's going to have the most optimal energy levels on 2 meals per day, or everyone's going to have the most optimal energy levels on 6 meals per day. No, there is a lot of individuality to that, and also to the point of how big of a meal you actually enjoy and want to and can digest in the right manner without feeling super fatigued afterwards. Because as I mentioned, if you have a meal that's too large, you're also going to fall into like a little bit of a hole afterwards and spend the next hour after your meal just digesting and being like, oh, I need a nap. I don't feel like I can focus on what I'm supposed to do now, and I actually just had a very short lunch. So that's not the point of it. And to further back that up, actually paying attention to what your meal consists of does play a role when it comes to steady energy levels throughout the day, not so much in the evening. I mean, in the evening we want to feel kind of sluggish or tired afterwards. That's actually good, and that's why we often recommend having carbs, especially, or simple carbs also at night. So things like rice, pasta, some sweets every now and then, wonderful carb sources for your dinner. Not always optimal for your lunchtime if you then want to continue to perform well mentally, unless that is like your pre-workout meal, or you feel absolutely fine with that in your meals. But just from working with many clients and also from personal experience, and I know that many people, if they have a carb heavier lunch, and especially if those carbs are simple carbs like white rice with not a whole lot of fats to slow down the digestion, then oftentimes like an hour later they feel super sleepy. So even just swapping from something like white rice to quinoa to sweet potato can sometimes help, because they contain more fiber and therefore are a little bit slower digested. Again, around your workouts, huge fan of white rice or even oats. Sometimes if people just have oats with maybe a protein shake, you might also feel tired or hungry like an hour later again. So add some flax seeds, add some almond butter or anything like that to slow the digestion down a little bit, and that could already make a big difference to your energy level. So it is fine to eat something every 3-4 hours. Absolutely. We don't want to be grazing consistently. That's not going to be good for our digestion or our energy levels. And again, in the evening, totally fine to have more of the simple carbs or the easier to digest things. But I would keep those to more of a minimum or to like in moderation throughout the day. Now I'm just looking at my notes to make sure I'm not missing anything here on either the energy levels or the previous points of the anxiety. But essentially, what we also want to make sure in terms of supporting the energy levels throughout the day in terms of our training. I don't know if you have felt that, but when I was training so hard with CrossFit in the morning, from about like 11, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired. I feel like I just need to lay down and do nothing. And that is sometimes one of the disadvantages if we're stressing the nervous system so much without training also. So once again, this would be a point for more bodybuilding style training or for a training which is less stressful in the nervous system, because then you're actually able to perform better mentally over the rest of the day without feeling quite that beaten up. There is a huge variation in tolerance for this personally, so just know who you are. But I'm saying that if you feel like you might have enough energy until like 10 or 11 a.m. and then you're just feeling like, well, you're dragging yourself through the rest of the day. Could be the training intensity or the type of training that you're doing in the morning that is not conducive to you being more alert for the rest of the day. And one of the questions that we got here actually was in regards to the 3 p.m. low. So the biggest thing that I think already mentioned is not having a lunch that is too large and not having a lunch that is too big in or too large in carbs or simple carbs in particular. So I would focus more on if lunch is not your post-workout meal or your immediate pre-workout meal, I would focus more on protein and healthy fats and fiber. So this could be salmon and a huge salad, or it could be some ground beef, a little bit of sweet potato, and lots of vegetables, or something like that. That's probably going to provide you with some pretty steady energy levels in the afternoon. And then the important thing would also be not to think another thing that you have to battle through mentally through the afternoon, and you can't have anything, and then you get to your dinner and again you're ravenous and you just want to eat everything. I find most people do a lot better if they have something between their lunch, which tends to be around noon or 1 o'clock, and their dinner, which tends to be around 6 or 7 p.m. So that's a very long stretch to go without anything. And then it's very easy to overeat in the evening or just to grab the wrong things because you're so starving. So having a snack mid-afternoon that contains some protein and maybe a little bit of fiber, or if it's your pre-workout meal, some fast digesting carbs on that front, can be really, really helpful. But even if you have an office job and you're like, should I drink a protein shake even though I'm just sitting there or not doing anything? Yeah, absolutely, you can do that. You could have a single serve low-fat Greek yogurt that you take with you to the office. It could be a protein bar. It can also be something savory like beef jerky or some boiled eggs. You can prepare some egg white cups and vegetables ahead of time, or even Starbucks offers those as well. So, anything in the afternoon that's just a small snack, if you're a female, maybe 200 calories or so, that breaks up that afternoon. That's going to give you another wind or a second wind for those last couple of hours so that you can then finish your workday successfully at 5 p.m. And that's when it's absolutely fine to feel like your energy is kind of running out. But before that, I do want you to perform well mentally and physically up until that point. So think about the training stimulus, think about what your meals are comprised of and how large they are. Are they too big? Are they too small? Are you eating too frequently, not frequently enough? Play around a little bit and just stay cognizant of how you're feeling throughout the day. Maybe even make some notes like, oh, I ate that, and then mentally recording or literally recording. 2 hours later, I had the worst crash ever. And even on the point of energy here, so we're no longer talking about anxiety, but energy, if you time your caffeine better and you minimize the caffeine, it's going to have a better effect. So if you're used to having 3-4 cups of coffee per day, you're number one, quite dependent on that. And number two, when you actually use it, it's not going to help that much, and afterwards you're probably experiencing much more of a crash than if you say you don't have any caffeine in the morning perhaps, and then mid morning you might think, okay, between this and my lunch I kind of fancy a coffee. This is a good time to have coffee, and if you tolerate or want caffeine, even go for it. But I personally would say stay away from having any caffeine in the afternoon, especially after 2 p.m. sort of thing. And I wouldn't want to rely on caffeine to get you through the afternoon. That should be more done also with some fresh air, standing up regularly, maybe going for a meal walk. Postprandial walks is super helpful. We have spoken about this so many times on this show here, how helpful they just are in terms of blood sugar regulation, but also digestion, and also just generally like waking you up more. What I have also found, and this is not really like directly related here, but what I have also found like is it's so important the lighting that I have and in which direction that I look. So if this laptop was even just like a little bit lower, like a foot lower, I would feel more sleepy, even just from the position that my head is in looking down. And there's research that really shows that like the direction in which you look, if you have a screen that's at least eye level, you're going to be a lot more alert than if it's something where you look down on. So I would highly recommend like thinking about your office setup. How much are you standing? Are you able to have a standing desk like this, which I actually like, I love. I'm just such a big fan of having a standing possibility when I work. But yeah, anyway, those would be some of the main things. So again, similar to when it comes to the anxiety, think about the meal frequency, the meal size, how are your meals comprised? When are you using your carbs? Are you using them strategically? When are you using your caffeine? Are you using it strategically? What sort of exercise are you doing? Is that helping you feel more energized, or is that actually making you feel like you're dragging throughout the day afterwards? And then just utilizing things like standing up, lighting, fresh air to add to that extra energy. But yeah, hopefully this was a little bit helpful for you. Next week, I'm actually just going to substitute the session with one of my research recaps. I do wish you all a wonderful Thanksgiving this week with your families and or friends. I personally will be here in Bolivia. They don't really celebrate it here, which is absolutely fine since I, as a German, don't necessarily celebrate it per se, but I think it's a wonderful holiday, a wonderful practice to just show some more gratitude. So I'm grateful for everybody listening here and just for you spending your time with me. If you have any questions about this, please do let me know.